Some interesting statistics came out recently on population migration. Guess which state had the greatest population loss in 2022? You guessed it, the state of California. Idaho, on the other hand, was ranked number 8 among all the states for having the highest domestic net migration. Now, there has to be a reason why people are moving out of California and into Idaho. Personally, I think the reason is that Idaho is a no-nonsense state with common sense values. So what I want to do in this video is compare Idaho's elected officials with those in California by highlighting their differing approaches to some key political issues. And by doing that, I think you'll get a pretty good idea of what some of Idaho's values are. So first of all, let me start with probably the most controversial issue, abortion. The leaders of our state, the state of Idaho, believe that unborn babies are humans and have a right to life. As you know, Roe versus Wade was overturned on June 24th of last year, 2022. All of Idaho's elected officials praised the decision. Let me give you just 2 quotes from our 2 state senators. Here's what Jim Risch said. He said, Roe versus Wade was wrongly decided in 1973, resulting in the deaths of millions of unborn babies over nearly half a century. The most basic right we as humans have is the right to life. And here's what our other senator, Mike Crapo, had to say about the decision. He said, I agree abortion is wrong and should be limited to cases where the mother's life is in imminent danger. The court's decision upholds states' ability to protect the right to life. Now, our Senator Jim Risch has not just praised the Dobbs decision, which overturned Roe, but he also has been actively trying to pass legislation that would further protect the right to life. So in the past several weeks, he has co-sponsored not 1, not 2, not 5, but 7 pro-life bills. So some of these bills include protecting individuals with Down syndrome, taking money away from organizations that sponsor abortion, and then also providing resources and education for mothers who are considering having abortions. California, on the other hand, is not so staunchly pro-life, to put it mildly. They are trying to do everything that they can in order to increase access to abortion. So let me give you just 2 quotes from their state senators. Here's what Dianne Feinstein had to say in June of last year after Roe versus Wade was overturned. She said, quote, there's no time to waste. Nearly half of the states already have laws in place to ban abortion or severely restrict access as soon as the Supreme Court decision comes down. Now is the time for bold action to protect the right to an abortion. And here's what the other California state senator, Alex Padilla, had to say. He said, we won't give up the fight to codify Roe and protect once and for all the right to an abortion. So in short, Idaho's leaders are doing everything they can to make it harder to take an innocent and unborn life. California's leaders are doing everything that they can in order to make it easier to take an innocent and unborn life. And number 2, Idaho and California's leaders have a vastly different approach to the homeless crisis. Now, there are more than 600,000 homeless people living across the United States. 28% of them live in California alone. According to some estimates, there's over 170,000 homeless people living in the state of California. And to be honest, the California leadership does recognize that this is a problem. If you look at the news, you see that they're not happy about it. Recently, the governor, actually, Gavin Newsom, went on TV and expressed anger at the homeless problem in the state. But here's where California and Idaho differ. California actually hasn't done anything about it. California has a supermajority of Democrats, so they can do almost anything that they want. And virtually every major city in California is run by councils and mayors who are Democrats. But they've done virtually nothing to solve the problem. In fact, a recent study has shown that the $1 billion that they've allocated to try to solve this homeless crisis in California would actually only reduce homelessness by 2% over the next 4 years. So maybe it's actually time to lead by example and actually change some of the policies that are exacerbating this homeless crisis. So let's contrast that now with the state of Idaho. About a year ago, individuals began gathering on Idaho's state property in front of the courthouse here in Boise. They set up a few tents. They started destroying public property. Evidently, they thought that San Francisco and Los Angeles were good models, and so they tried to bring these illegal encampments to the state of Idaho. So Governor Brad Little filed a lawsuit to stop these illegal encampments. And then shortly thereafter, the state ended up clearing everybody out, but the public encampment advocates filed a lawsuit against the state. In their view, the state can't do that. The state can't clear illegal encampments from public property, from state property. Well, just this past month, the Supreme Court ruled in favor of the state of Idaho. So here's what our governor had to say after the courts cleared the state of any wrongdoing. Governor Little said, quote, "Idaho is not Portland, Los Angeles, San Francisco, or Seattle, where public officials have engaged in failed experiments to permit and encourage unsafe and destructive public camping." Number 3, Idaho's leaders believe that the state should be responsible with its budget. According to the Wall Street Journal, Idaho had one of the best performing budgets in the country last year. In fact, one study that I saw, I think, ranked Idaho's budget the 4th best among the 50 states. Last year, we finished the fiscal year with a $1.4 billion surplus, which was actually more than we anticipated. And so the governor actually cut taxes and gave some of that tax money back to the people of Idaho. Over the past several years, our surplus has increased by over 50%, and the governor has returned more than $2.7 billion in one-time tax relief and $650 million in ongoing tax relief. Now, I think we still could even do better here in Idaho as it relates to taxes, but as far as the budget and the economy is concerned, Idaho is certainly headed in the right direction. By contrast, California actually just announced this past November that they are anticipating a $24 billion deficit this coming year. Now, actually, true to this whole culture of redefinition, they call it a budget problem, not a budget deficit. Now, I think you can really see the stark contrast between Idaho's approach to finance and California's approach to finance by looking at how the state senators responded to the massive $1.7 trillion omnibus spending package that was passed in December at the national level. Both of our state senators voted against the $1.7 trillion spending bill. Jim Risch actually said that the bill fulfills 98% of Democratic member requests and includes $5 billion for over 3,200 liberal pet projects. And then he lists some of them out. $800 million of it goes for housing illegal immigrants. $2 million of it goes for a wax museum in Baltimore. $750,000 is providing for a workforce development program and is supportive services for transgender and gender non-conforming and intersex immigrant women in Los Angeles. $3.6 million for a Michelle Obama trail in Georgia, and preventative language to ensure no funding for customs and border protection is used to improve border security. And guess what Dianne Feinstein had to say about it? She said, quote, "The omnibus bill reflects our nation's values. It includes several provisions that I've championed." Now, I'll admit it, I actually haven't read the omnibus bill. It's 4,155 pages long, so I'll just have to take the politician's word on it. But my guess is that the bill does reflect the values of California, but not those of the state of Idaho. Number 4, Idaho believes in safe and legal immigration, not in open borders. Now, this is an issue that our Governor Brad Little has trumpeted quite a bit over the past several years, because this open door policy that we've seen down on the U.S.-Mexico border has actually led to a massive increase in fentanyl and other drugs that have poured across the border into our country. And we've seen that in particular here in the state of Idaho. So the border issue is not just an issue that affects several states in the United States. It's an issue that affects all of us. So one policy that the Trump administration instituted in order to deal with this crisis is called Title 42. And what this does is it allows the United States to expel illegal immigrants from our country and have them remain in Mexico while their case is pending. Recently, there's been quite a bit of discussion about removing that policy. So removing Title 42 would allow immigrants into our country, and then we would basically have to hope that they would show up at their court hearing when their case appears, usually a few years or so after they've actually entered the United States illegally. As you would expect, California state senators are against Title 42. Here's what Alex Padilla had to say last year. He said, quote, "It's long overdue for Title 42 to end. Its misguided implementation puts countless people in danger and has wreaked havoc on our asylum system that desperately needs repair." Well, on December 27th, the Supreme Court ruled in favor of retaining Title 42, at least for the near future. And here's what our Governor Brad Little had to say about this Supreme Court decision. He said, quote, "Fentanyl is the deadliest drug our communities have ever faced, and it is pouring into our country across a border that remains open under the current administration. The High Court's decision to keep in place the Trump-era Title 42 policy for now is welcome news." So in addition to all of that, Idaho senators have been working on some other legislation recently. So for example, Jim Risch and Mike Crapo co-sponsored a bill called the Parental Rights Over the Education and Care of Their Kids Act. This bill protects the parental rights by preventing schools from concealing information about students' gender from their parents. And they've also co-sponsored a bill called the American Act, which reinstates service members who have been fired over COVID vaccines. Now, obviously, those bills have a bit of time to work their way up the political pipeline still. But if they do get to a vote, I'm pretty sure I know which way California would vote on both of those bills.